point that like I had forgot, like after Avengers vs. X-Men, on the Avengers side, what happens is you've got X-Men going into an Avengers team. You have X-Men, Havoc, which we've talked about as a leader.
Yeah.
Like, that kind of stuff is happening in Avengers. And then AVX hits the X-Men in a totally different way, and you see none of the Avengers over an X-Men. And I think the X-Men storylines are playing out way better because of that. Like, instead of trying to, like, cross them over, this event happened, and then, bang, these are the results. And I love what's going on in X-Men. Maybe you can't compare them directly, but I think just overall, the X-Men side of it with this rogue Cyclops and him turning into a worse version of Magneto, I'm loving that whole thing that's going on.
Yeah, I agree.
Cable and X-Force is an awesome book that's rolling right out of that.
That Cable and X-Force is like one story arc away from just becoming fantastic. The first story arc, I think you brought it up, it was a bit anticlimactic. It seemed like it was really going somewhere, and then it just, I don't know. I don't want to bash it. I really love the book. I love the characters in it.
I love
it. Just felt like they really, I feel like they need somebody really fantastic to battle. All they did was sort of battle these big zombie, fat blob things. They're going into outer space come the next one, so that might take off into an unusual direction. But they lost Colossus.
Yeah.
One of my favorite characters. And now he's not going to be along for the ride.
That team was that's a cool team. Like, if you like the Marvel Universe and you like kind of like these outlying characters that are in the background, that's a book that I think does well of just pulling them all together. I think that's a very weird mix, but it just works so well. It's
so the odd man out of the X-Men.
And I think that's one of the books that is the best like follow up to Avengers vs. X-Men too.
Yeah, and it deals with the backlash.
It deals with it. That's what I think.
Cable, Hope, Colossus.
It really affected X-Men more than did the Avengers. Instead of just a shakeup of the team, I think there's more lasting effects in X-Men, and I'm loving everything about it. I'm loving this new Cyclops more than anything.
Oh, I just want the only thing I gotta say is a little weird, and I'm waiting for something to happen on Uncanny X-Men. Their powers are all muted now, so Magneto can't really magnetize things as well as he used to. Cyclops can't
control it.
Choose power beams. Okay, like we know they're gonna get their powers back. It's sort of frustrating to watch, especially the last issue. They were pretty much fighting with the Avengers. It wasn't a real fight. Not to spoil it, something happens and it doesn't really go it doesn't go where you think it's gonna go. But I want to see these guys get their powers back, and there still is a beef between the Avengers and the X-Men, at least with Cyclops' Avengers, or Cyclops' X-Men. Let's see him go at it, man, and let's see the powers back. I want badass, man. He's got kind of a cool new uniform. I want badass, rip a fucking building out Magneto back.
I agree, but the one thing that I would change is I don't really care to see the Avengers fight him again. I want to see the classic Wolverine and Cyclops schools going at each other. Well, not classic schools, but like those two guys who have been hating each other for years. I just think it's insane in a good way, how like Cyclops went from wanting to become Professor X to essentially going down the road to becoming Magneto. Or worse.
He is Magneto.
And then
Magneto's Magneto.
And somehow, Wolverine is the one who's keeping the cause in the name of Jean. It's so interesting because they're keeping all this history now. I mean, I'm not fully caught up on all new X-Men. I like that idea that's going on.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the trades for that. I got caught.
Yeah.
I didn't even pick that one up.
But it's a cool idea to show like that history coming back.
Yeah.
Like, you used to be this guy, and now look at what you've become.
For a period of time, though. I'm wondering how long that's going to go on.
I hope it lasts. Yeah. I would love to see that.
What's the interaction been like between like the old Cyclops and the new Cyclops?
I haven't gotten that far. I've only kind of seen like what the interaction of them in our world is. The timelines really don't even make sense. If you look at it, I don't know, are they from the 60s? Yeah. They would have to be from the 80s now.
I don't know. I gotta admit, Avengers vs. X-Men was very bizarre. It didn't really go, it wasn't bad. It just didn't really go the direction that I thought it was going to go. There was some fighting in the beginning, scattered fighting, and I know it was one of those jobs where you had to pick up the other books to see more of the real head-to-head action. But the main title really didn't have those two groups going at it. I mean, there was brief pages of things, but there were certain fights we were all waiting to see. Disappointed on that level a little bit.
They added the Phoenix Force to kind of change the whole game.
Yeah, and then they all kind of, and then eventually, with the exception of the Phoenix 5 or whatever the heck they were called, everybody had to team up against the Phoenix 5, the Phoenix Force possessing their friends, and it became more focused. It was more Avengers and X-Men or Avengers vs. Phoenix Force, as opposed to this really what you. I don't know. It didn't live up to this title, so I do want to see a rematch.
Yeah, I would have liked to see. I mean, we could go on for days of what we would have liked or not. I thought that Phoenix 5 was a cool idea. It sucks that it lasted for so little time. I would have. I mean, I love what the Cyclops is now, what they're doing with him. I really like that Phoenix Force Cyclops. I thought that costume was great. I mean, for a dude who for years had some shitty costumes, in the last year, Cyclops is two of the coolest redesigned costumes.
Oh, it's great costume. It's going back to Astonishing X-Men when they John Cassidy switched his costume. Yeah. Then they revamped that. It was more of a blue and gold, and they made it like a black and gold. They did some things around the wrist and stuff. And now his new costume, that guy LaRoche, who does Uncanny Cable in the X-Force. Next issue, Cyclops is showing up in that, and there's been a preview. It says "Daddy's Home," and it's just this jacked Cyclops with that big X over his face. Great looking costume, man. You're right.
It reminds me of a little of Racer X from Speed Racer.
It actually does.
But
too bad.
It is cool as hell. I mean,
does look great.
The visor will always be Cyclops, and you would think without that visor, it's not really Cyclops anymore. But that X,
I like it.
Is so cool. Right. You got the X-Men right on his face. That's all he's ever had. You see Wolverine, like I said, he's the driving force for the cause right now. But he's all over the place. He's in Avengers. He's in this. He's in that. Cyclops is the X-Men. Yeah. His whole life, his everything is the X-Men, and have it right on his face like that. Oh man.
Yeah, it's almost like he's putting a target, and that target's the X-Men.
And now he's depowered or not as powerful anymore. And I think there's so many interesting ideas going on. And this is funny that this was the event that actually, seems to have a little bit of lasting power. We'll see how long it totally lasts for. But it's shaking everything up, and I think the X-Men books have really been the shit.
I agree. I agree. Avengers, you're slacking a little bit.
Yeah.
And Hickman, with the exception of New Avengers, and maybe retitle New Avengers. What the hell is that all about? But,
Avengers Illuminati.
Avengers Illuminati. AI. I mean, it makes more sense.